on in, you guys. Let's look at the archives.
You know, they started brewing Olympia up in Tumwater, Washington in 1896.
Where have we put it today?
When I went to school in Olympia.
Search is on. Well, it looks like it's happened again, and that's that some of the staff have decided not to follow archiving process. Thank you. And I am now searching for stuff that's usually in order that's no longer in order because somebody came in here and moved things around. The way the process is supposed to work is the staff are supposed to email me or contact me in some way and tell me what they're looking for and hopefully about what year they're looking for it. And then I come in and I know basically where most of the folders are, and I can find it and make them photocopies, and then they get to keep the photocopy I make for them for forever. But since the archiving budget was cut, I have only enough time to just do maintenance, which is almost every week. Where did 78 go? Guess who's going to guess?
They weren't really growing that much in the 70s, were they?
That's true. We weren't growing, but forming.
Yeah, forming.
It was definitely a formative period. You know, I think you can't ignore things like the Rodale organic farming movement was a key piece in people wanting to change the food they were able to buy, and then changing how they bought it, I think was, you know, the 70s were a really fertile time when people actually did talk about capitalism and analyze it and analyze its impact on things like war and justice and racism. And I think a lot of those, that sort of politically fertile time, what drove a lot of the start of co-ops.
All power to the people. We feed hungry kids. We feed hungry children who are raised in the richest nation on earth. We feed children in a country where the farmers are paid not to grow wheat.
It's a big time of organizing for the United Farm Workers, so awareness of how food was produced was rising. I'm going to speculate that it was probably in the 50s that people stopped knowing that their food came from a farm. You know, the urbanization of food and food production, and you could ask a kid where the milk came from, and they said the milkman, you know. So that from the 50s through the probably mid-70s or early 70s, that was a big time of losing touch with food and where food came from. And so I think the 70s represented sort of a time period where people started to get back in touch. Certainly not all the way, and certainly there's still kids who don't know that milk comes from a cow or a goat or a soybean or an almond or an oat, a hemp. A whole lot of co-ops from the 70s got started as food buying clubs, no brick and mortar, just groups of households or family units coming together and ordering food together to both save money and also because there was really little access to organic. It was before there were any organic standards. Just getting, you know, whole grains was not an easy prospect at that point in time. Well, this idea grew and grew, and by the end of the food buying club or food conspiracy era here in Olympia, there were 6 independent food buying clubs. There was a produce wholesaler down in the Nisqually Valley, and every Saturday morning, one driver and one shopper from each of the 6 buying clubs would go there really early on Saturday morning and buy what all of our households wanted for that week, for the coming week. And at one point, the people who ran Nisqually, I think it's called Nisqually Valley Produce, that's what it was called at the time, said, you can't keep doing this. We can't keep having 6 independent buying clubs rummaging through our boxes of broccoli every Saturday morning. You have to figure out some other way to do this. So we created this 6 buying club system where instead of getting together on Friday night and saying how many pounds of broccoli you were going to get that next Saturday, we'd get together, Foot Street would get together on Wednesday, and McPhee would get together on Wednesday, and the Evergreen Dorm group got together on Wednesday. And then we'd send one buyer out for all 6 buying clubs.
This was South Puget Sound Community Co-op. Yeah, we used to have meetings every Thursday. And then on Fridays we got deliveries here. It was kind of chaotic, actually.
The households that could actually handle having that much going on their property began to want a little bit of compensation because it meant they couldn't use their garage for anything else, you know. Some of the clubs found it difficult to get there on time, and so we identified a need to have a refrigerator. And so over time, there became these costs.
I think it's just to add on, because this history that happened in Olympia, this was actually going on nationwide.
Yes.
March 9th, 1977 was apparently
When we incorporated,
was
I
our
think, right?
incorporation date.
Yeah.
And we opened sometime after that, and we opened over on this street, down about 2 blocks. Do you know which storefront it was exactly? Was it Jack's Shoe Store?
No, I think it was the
Midnight Sun?
Wasn't the Mekong?
Is it the Mekong? I don't know.
I think it was the Mekong. So we had an experience once where the power went out, and we didn't have the box was upstairs. The electrical box was upstairs, and we didn't have a key to the upstairs. But no, I think it probably was I don't think it was a shoe store because I think that was there. I think it might have been the secondhand store.
That shoe store's been there for 40 years?
It wasn't Jack's at the time, but there was a shoe repair store. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Anyway, we had to send somebody who had experience breaking into places in through a second-story window to get the power turned back on. Those were the days.
Those were the days. Yes.
Newsletters to start out with. Ooh, August 79. That's fortuitous. I love the hand drawings. Like, I totally love that. There's something about going through the archives that I find really peaceful. Not for nostalgia, because I wasn't here. Like, I didn't join the co-op until '88. But just to watch the evolution, I guess that's the big thing. Like, you go back here and you see old high school newspaper. And then on the next one you see, oh, it evolved. Look, prettier. Look at that. The art's more refined. It's not a font, it's like finely done calligraphy. Better mastheading. Just so cool. And that was a year later. We looked at 79. Here's 1980. It's just growing up. Oh, we should get a shot of that. That's extremely relevant. And here's 1981, and it was still one of the major things we focused on. People working against racism. From the Anti-Klan Coalition. That's great. It was a community action meeting. That is so cool.
I arrived in Olympia in October of 1981 and promptly joined the co-op. It had that real sort of old-style co-op smell to it. And, I remember when they put in the new cooler doors Because the old ones look like they were off a ship or something.
Okay, so I was involved with the co-op when it made the big move from Columbia Street up to Bowman and Rogers, the new store on the west side. And it was an important time, too, for the co-op because that was the beginning of the Reagan administration. And Reagan was very hard on social programs. And so there were problems, people were having just getting food. And the co-op was, concerned and looking where it fit in the community to help people with that problem. Olympia was a relocation center for Southeast Asians.
Then on the morning of the 29th of April, North Vietnamese artillery began shelling the airport and their forward commando units attacked the city's outer defenses.
Saigon had just fallen to the Viet Cong. The war was over and tens of thousands of South Vietnamese were forced to immediately flee the country. California's governor, then and now, Jerry Brown, did not want them in his state. Governor Evans was infuriated by Brown's declaration and decided Washington would welcome the refugees with open arms. 500 heeded his call and headed north to begin a new life in Washington. 1,000 more came the following year.
The board met with George Barner, who was the county commissioner then, to see if we could find a way to help them set up a food buying club. And also, looking into the whole problem of transportation. What the board did there is we approached Intercity Transit to see if they would start a bus pass program. It got so the Department of Social and Health Services could give out passes to people that needed transportation to the food bank or grocery shopping, or like getting to school to South Puget Sound Community College or the Evergreen State College. I really enjoyed that work. One of the difficulties, among many difficulties, that the co-op faced when it first moved to the west side was just community acceptance. I mean, the neighborhood, there was a lot of hostility. And just getting people in the neighborhood to accept us. And, they viewed us as hippies that were probably going to corrupt their children, eat their dogs, During that transition time, we had a kind of a motto that I think is relevant even today, and that is don't sell food, sell cooperative. So that our vision was, if the co-op was going to make it, it was going to be as a cooperative, not as a food store. And we did.
I remember sort of the pivotal thing that happened at the co-op in the early 80s was that Harry Levine and Grace Cox were hired.
I got hired at the co-op in May of 1984. And our collective at that size expanded from 5 people to 8 people. The co-op apparently was struggling financially in the early 80s and did some remodeling to actually modernize it and to stop just trying to appeal to greeners. That's what I was told. And it's pretty funny because I watched that transition happen, and I was one of the people who thought it was really a bourgeois sellout. They put all that lattice work up.
Right.
And,
Right.
And I'm
Put the bulk foods in actual bins. Instead of in garbage cans.
It's because we came out of that food buying club mentality where basically everything was as budget as it possibly could be, and it wasn't based. The whole philosophy was, we're not capitalists, we're anti-capitalists, and we're not trying to play the game of marketing and and selling stuff that same way. And so the co-op started actually changing that way, and I mean just a little bit, not.
Yeah, such a small amount.
And it's often said that, Harry and Grace, it's like they own the co-op, or they're like the parents at the co-op or something. But one of the things that they helped to occur at the co-op was the sort of taking more financial responsibility.
And that period of time when Harry was hired, and then 6 months later I was hired as either one of the high points or one of the absolute low points for the Olympia Food Co-op, depending on whether you like shiny and slightly higher end operations that don't require as much participation, or you like this sense that Harry was talking about that we're about the community, we're about building community, we're about working together to get food and have our food, and thinking about the full system, not just thinking about what thing in a box would you like to take home and eat, but actually also thinking about how are the workers who made that food treated? How are the farm workers who harvest that food? How are they treated? And bringing that sense of social justice and politics into this thing, because while there are folks who want to say food not politics or don't bring politics into this, the fact of the matter is that everything is political, and as long as we're trading basic necessities in a capitalist economy, it's highly political.
It seemed like some sort of vibe about the co-op changed at that point. And the working member system sort of became a lot more present.
So the Olympia Food Co-op went through sort of a fundamental struggle in 85, 86?
Yeah, about then.
Yeah, 85, 86, where basically we fought for the soul of what we believed, Grace and I really strongly, and some of the other people who were there, who are all gone now.
Yeah.
That we were fighting for the soul of the co-op. We were like, when we were told the working member system was inefficient, we said efficiency is not the point of the working member system. The point of the working member system is that the members get to work in their store for a discount, and it's about building community. It's a different sort of philosophy.
I don't think anyone ever asked me to be a working member before that, but I think Harry invited me. He was like, hey, why don't you be a working member? And so I'm probably making that up, but I think it's probably pretty true. It's because he trained me to be a cashier in 1984. And I've been a cashier ever since.
Most of the old staff left, and we took it upon ourselves to sell the board of directors that collective management was still the stuff. So we set out really to save collective management and developed all sorts of and we were both, we were 6 months to a year and a half into this, and we were the senior staff.
There were a few funny things about the co-op that back in the day, as maybe somebody's already mentioned. Back until 1987, you could only play music in the co-op that had no words. And the cassettes they had to play had these color-coded stickers, like these are cassettes that have no words on them, and these are ones that do. And the music policy in 1987 basically states you can play anything you want, you can take off anything you want, except for Christmas music, no Christmas music. Which is still true, still the policy.
We bought the West Side store.
We bought the store.
That was a big decision in the late 80s.
Because
Right.
as one dear friend and member said, wrote on his ballot, ownership rots your soul.
And I was in the store one day, and I saw a customer, and I just smiled at her, this older woman, and she just turned to me, she goes, you're the first person that's ever smiled at me in here, which just sort of broke my heart. And I decided then and there that I was just like, I'm just going to try and be the nicest person in the store. And maybe other people will do that too. And, it's not to say that, like, my coworkers then were all grumpy jerks or anything. People were great and helpful, and it's just that there was sort of this attitude about, like, the customer is not always right. And I think that attitude was a response to people working in situations where you just had to be a servant in customer service. That was the only role you could play. And so people were reacting to that sort of notion. And for a while, I definitely was like, great, I don't have to be a servant. But then, in that moment that I was just talking about a minute ago, about that woman was talking about smiling, I realized, I get to be in service.
One of the most pivotal times for me was when the business really took off. We were kind of a niche type of grocery store for a long time for students, you know, and various people in the community. But one day there was a piece in the news about Alar, the stuff that they spray on apples and how toxic it was. And that was such a game changer.
Meryl Streep went on some national program and said there is poison on our apples and we're killing our children. And that kicked off the modern organic movement.
And it was a specific pesticide called Alar.
Dimetazide, which has been sprayed on apples for more than 20 years, breaks down into another chemical called UDMH.
The EPA's acting administrator, Dr. Jack Moore, acknowledged that the EPA has known about the cancer risk for 16 years.
Once a pesticide gets its license, gets its registration, is on the market, despite what everybody might think, the burden of carrying unreasonable risk finding basically goes on to the government. All right?
But you see, a lot of these chemicals got on the market when we didn't know that they were cancer-causing agents, and they're on the market now, and we know that they do cause cancer.
You're correct.
But you're saying we can't take them off because they're already on the market, and they went on the market, and we didn't know they caused cancer.
That's the paradox of the statute. It's crazy.
I mean, people just started coming from all segments of the community. Do you guys sell organic apples? Do you guys sell organic apples? I don't want to feed my kids pesticides.
The average preschooler drinks 18 times more apple juice than his or her mother. If those apples were treated with dimetazide, the cancer risk is perilously high.
And I feel like that was the moment where we went a little bit more mainstream and brought in a lot more people that hadn't experienced the co-op before. And even though it was for something that was kind of intense and not very positive exactly, it ended up being really positive, I think, for them and for us, because it kind of introduced people to a lot of other possibilities that maybe they hadn't considered. That was back in the day when you couldn't get organic food at Safeway. Now, of course, you can, but I still think we do it better.
A little ironic story about that whole thing was that Olympia Food Co-op was still really tiny, right?
Yes.
We had never bought a pallet full of one single product before. Now we do it somewhat frequently, but we had never done it before. And 1 week before Meryl Streep broke the Alar scare, I had made a deal for a full pallet of gallons of organic apple juice.
Oh, that's right. Forgot about the story.
We had the only organic apple juice anywhere.
Suddenly we went from being this little neighborhood grocery store, local grocery store, to making more money per square foot than any retail grocery store in the state of Washington. It's kind of hard to believe, but you couldn't even walk down the aisles. It was that crowded.
Okay, so that was all the way through 89, so this is 90 and 91.
And then everything for me about the co-op changed in 1990. I guess I did well in the interviews enough that they gave me a job. Kitty was just saying that she was the 9th person hired, and back then they thought that was too many. Definitely I was a bit overwhelmed, and I faked it a lot. And there was a lot of, there was a lot of technology change that had a big effect at the co-op. When I first got there, I think we had a 386 without Windows. Was the only computer in the business.
In 1990, 1991, when we exceeded $1 million in sales, 91?
We sort of knew that we were going to pass the $1 million mark in that year, but we thought it would be so demoralizing to budget for $1 million in sales and not make it that we budgeted for $999,999.99.
Yeah.
What happened for the most of the early 90s, or for the first half of the 90s, was the second store.
From the time that the co-op decided to expand into a second store into the east side, split the west side into west and east, it took about 5 years, I think.
The second store kind of took everything we had to get up and off the ground. in part because one of the things that Harry and Susan Buse, I think was her name, of the other expansion coordinator, one of the things that they did was they really made it so that every step of the way members could have a say.
And then I think it was 1991 that we put out a major ballot, and this is a big moment in our history, because it was where we asked the membership, what do you want to do on a bunch of different things.
So there was a meeting for everything. And when a person would come up and say, well, what about this? You know, blah, 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 we could say, oh, well, there was a meeting that we publicized, and that was when that information got discussed, and, you know, certainly we want your information, too. So, you know, you can tell us. We'd love to know.
We asked the membership, do you still support collective management as our form of management, and do you still support the support of a volunteer working member system? And it was our biggest response in ballots in our history, still to this date. I mean, almost 900, 850 or something like that, ballots. And all of the answers were pretty overwhelmingly clear. I mean, the collective and working member were insane. Like,
Yep.
like 95 to 98% of the people supported those values.
There was a story about some staff people going to a co-op in Eugene and talking to the membership there as sort of like, you know, hey, how do you seem to be being successful, how are you doing it? You know, so the membership would come. And a guy got up and asked Harry something like, how can you possibly justify selling meat in your store? And Harry's answer was, oh, I don't have to. The membership voted and said it was okay.
'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the co-op, not a worker was working, no opener with mop, no closer was sweeping, not a stalker was stocking, no cashier was sleeping, not a staff person mocking. The co-op was closed, it was shut for the night, and all the next day, it would be closed up tight. But this Christmas Eve, I saw a strange sight. In the lot at the co-op, all was not right. It started out slowly, and faster, the cars were arriving. It was a disaster. Then I glanced out the doors, and what did I see? A lot full of members all screaming, me! Don't close the co-op, you must let us shop. Without tofu and seitan, we simply will drop. The store must be open all days of the year, stay open all night. May we shop without fear? The mob soon turned ugly and pushed on the door, and they were stopping and chanting, we own this store! It was at that moment that I realized my fate and knew that my chances were not very great. No time for a meeting, no time for agendas, no time for consensus, no board to defend us. So I walked to the front and opened the door and yelled, here's the keys to your goddamn store.
The members voted to open a second store by a solid majority. I mean, 65-ish% or something like that, and specified the East Side neighborhood. And so that's what we set out to do, and spent a couple of years looking for a location until we expanded our location parameters to what people considered the East Side store to be, which was deep Lacey. Yeah. You know. So anyways, we found that store. It was perfect. We opened that store April 1st, 1994.
The 1994 hiring, which got us from 13 staff members to 26, there were 300 applications. And in the meantime, there were a whole bunch of people who were working as staff subs. So if I had some sort of task to do about expansion and I needed some time off of my shift, I could just get a staff sub to do it. Which was great for a while. You know, staff subs thought, hey, we got employment, that's great. And it's pretty good pay, and my hours are flexible. And I didn't like this thing that happened while I was at work, and now I don't feel like I can really tell anyone about it, and I don't feel like I have any power. Now I feel like I want to be empowered. And so a staff sub collective was created. And there were staff subs who got hired, and there were staff subs who did not get hired, which was sort of shitty. A similar thing happened with paid cashiers. That eventually got dissolved, the paid cashier system. And And when it did, I remember a board member saying to a staff member about it, don't ever do this again.
This is when staff meetings were all the entire staff would meet. And we would all get together in one big room. For the longest time, it was at the Olympia Center. We would all get together in a big room around a huge table, or sometimes we just circle a whole bunch of long tables, and sit in a room and all talk at one time. And there would be a handful of people who would run the stores, but uniformly it was almost all of us would be in the meeting room. And everybody was super engaged, and everybody would talk and take their turns, and there was this real feeling of unity within the staff.
We started to do a lot of stuff about diversity, so there were diversity trainings, and there were attempts with hiring to diversify the staff. And we weren't really prepared for the growing pains that brought. We brought in a lot of people to do trainings. And about 20 years ago, Leticia Nieto came in and gave us the model of anti-oppression strategies. It definitely gave us some ways to converse about oppression, some common language.
The agent is the basic person who has been socialized to be the oppressor, and allyship is a person who has agency but is interested in being an ally and deconstructing racism, and targetship is the target of the oppression.
When members sometimes say, "Why are you doing this political work? Why are you doing?" We have in our mission statement, promote social and economic justice. That is part of our purpose. We're not just here to sell groceries.
The co-op's not always been political. It's always been a political entity.
At a time when everybody else was trying to get all the politics out of their mission statements and make, 3-word mission statements like fun, food, and frivolity. I don't think frivolity is actually in anybody's mission statement.
The 3 Fs.
But seriously, that became the mission statements of the 90s, and we added words,
Right.
We didn't strip words out.
So the 90s were mainly about getting the second store open and then getting used to the second store and hoping that it didn't sink us.
We were sort of the only store in America doing it that was managed collectively with a volunteer working member system that was opening a second location and trying to maintain those systems. So it was sort of like, it was the wild frontier.
And everything was done with pencil, and everything, working member hours were written down in books with pencils, and everyone seemed kind of happy about the looseness and the carefreeness, and yet problems came up.
First year struggled financially, did not meet the projections for what we hoped to do, but by 1996 it had totally turned around and had become a super successful natural foods co-op.
That's way off the topic of the archives. I'm just gonna keep flipping through and finding things.
So go to sleep and make the change. I'll meet you here tomorrow. Independence Day, Independence Day, Independence Day.
They'll tell you everything's fine. They're lying to you. Everything ain't fine. We are this close to just going crazy, going to hell. It's going to explode. Everything, because they don't know. Because who knew we'd run out of 19s?
Hey, Homer, weren't you the plant's Y2K compliance officer?
You did fix them, right, Dad? Because even a single faulty unit could corrupt every other computer in the world.
When we decided to convert the co-op's cash register systems to a point-of-sale system, Up until that point, we would price every item with a little sticker that had the price on it, and the cashier would enter the price. The scanners in grocery stores had existed for probably 20 years at that point. It was as if the co-op used like a handsaw while there were perfectly good circular saws out in the world. Some people among the membership were not happy that we switched. We held some forums.
Okay, scanners, do you want them or do you not want them? And pretty much no one came forward and we didn't really hear anything. So we went around and we did all this stuff on which lasers were the healthiest and which would be the least impactful, which would not harm our customers. The research was just excruciatingly thorough, which I adored, and I was super proud of us for doing. And so we went ahead and we brought them in. And it was almost the moment we brought them in, we had a huge number of customers flip out and go, "Oh my God, I can't believe you did this. Oh, it's so dangerous. That's gonna blind my child." And I mean, those concerns are all valid, but where were you? Like that's what I wanted to say. It's like, why didn't you come? Why didn't you come to any of the 5 years worth of meetings and talk to us? What happened? I'm not sure where we failed as a co-op to include people, because it's like, well, where were you?
Ultimately, we decided that it was in the best interest of the co-op to keep the equipment and keep using it. But, dissent is what makes us stronger.
And the thing is now is no one even thinks about it. No one even thinks about it.
There was a small group that formed that was involved with the Sustainable Community Roundtable. So it sort of branched into these two organizations that formed, and one was Enterprise for Equity, which is still in existence today, and the other was Tulip, which was a low-income credit union that aimed to provide loans to people who were being denied loans by traditional lenders. Folks from the roundtable came to the co-op and asked if there was anyone in the co-op who would be interested in helping. And I was one of the bookkeepers at the co-op at the time, and so I had some familiarity and understanding of financial services, and it became clear that in order to get the credit union off the ground, they really needed to have a dedicated staff person to head up the project, and the co-op agreed to supply the project with my hours. I worked on that project for about 3 years. It opened inside the Eastside Co-op and operated there for, I think, almost 10 years.
Go to the free store at the Westside Co-op. Well, we started in, '04, when the free box had been closed for a while, and the board decided that we could afford to have volunteers run it and keep it neat so that the health department wouldn't shut us down. And Walt, I, and a lady named Elizabeth Shea were the primary movers on getting it shelves put in and cleaned up and painted out and stuff like that. And Walt did a Tuesday morning shift for about 12 years, and I've been doing a Monday morning shift ever since '04, so that's about 13 years. And there's a marvelous music video that a friend of Walt and I did.
There's a place in my neighborhood you should really visit if you could. I'm talking about things you don't want or need. You've got something extra, it can still do some good. When it takes up too much space, it can become an awesome deed. Take it to the free store. Take it to the free store. There's a volunteer who opens up the door. Take it to the free store. Take it to the free store. You can always leave with a little something more.
My name is Alejandro Garcia.
one of the biggest impacts that I have when I came for the first time to this store, it was cutely open with my own arm, my hand, the door. And I thought that was very interesting that we had that. So my first attempt to do something for the co-op was to change that that practices to open the door with your shopping cart. So I just mentioned in a collective meeting, we probably could change that door. There's automatic doors today. So I remember that one of the supporters of the idea was Virginia, and she said, go for it. So I needed to create a proposal and to investigate, to get different kind of budgets and costs and things involved. We needed to open the little hole of the door bigger, make a frame and all stuff. That was the beginning of the vestibule today that is still in progress. Everything starts and goes in progress in the Olympia Food Co-op. So every time I go there, I remember that was the beginning of one of the beginnings of my experience as an employee at the co-op. I hope that you enjoy it.
There's this whole major push. I mean, we've always been into locally produced and organic.
People that buy at the co-op are really wanting to buy local products.
Yes.
And so it's so nice to have a place that we local people can just go and and sell at the co-op, because people are very responsive.
And they want the grass-fed dairy, and they want the local. And
they want our stuff. And the co-op was actually one of our easiest stores to get into. They're so local farmer friendly. Mm-hmm. It was kind of just a nice, easy fit.
But there was this point where the staff decided we were going to do something far more cohesive, and we were really going to start talking to all the local growers, and we were really going to have people start coming together, the farmers coming together, the growers coming together as a group, and so that everybody would get a fair price, so everybody's work would be equally valued. And I just thought it was this huge, amazing thing, and it was our produce managers who helped make that real. I mean, if it hadn't been for them, I doubt that the farmers would have met, and I doubt that they would have ever come to any kind of agreement about what was going to happen. And our produce folks were just so committed in so many ways to just let everybody's work be recognized in this really concrete way.
There are times when someone will ask if we have, butter lettuce, and table will have just delivered it. It just came in the door, and I can open that box and sell that to them. And it's pretty exciting to have the food be coming that directly to us, that fresh, and to know that it's grown with integrity by someone I know. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a reality that our crops come in and out of being ready for sale. And there are plenty of weeks when we, due to weather or whatever reasons, we just don't have the product, and we can take a week off and know that when we have it again next week, we can send it to you guys, because of the Local Farms program, where you create a system to prioritize local farms over produce that comes from distributors from a more vast area.
I'm so proud of us.
And then, of course, I guess we should probably say it, huh? One of the biggest things that happened.
Are we thinking the same thing?
I'm guessing we're thinking the same thing.
Any impression?
No.
Oh.
I was thinking the boycott.
The Olympia Food Co-op in Washington State has voted to boycott Israeli goods.
When our board of directors voted to join the Boycott, Divestment, Sanctions, BDS movement, that's a worldwide movement, and we were the only store in America to do that.
The co-op is believed to be the first U.S. grocery store to agree to such a boycott.
We just zoomed to the forefront of the news.
One item exempted from the boycott is peace oil, a fair trade olive oil made by Palestinians and exported by Israelis.
This is where the co-op has had international impact and, received praise and criticism for that decision, and still do to this day. And are tied up in a lawsuit around it, and it was obviously a big deal organizationally.
The Co-op is a nonprofit organization. It has a long history of doing social work and promoting political self-determination. It's adopted various boycotts over the years, but in 2010, the board voted by consensus to boycott Israeli goods. More than a year later, 5 of the 22,000 members sued 16 volunteer board members, those who passed the boycott and those who were sitting on the board when the suit was brought. The board responded by asking them to specify how they had violated the co-op's governing documents and by inviting them to initiate a ballot process to put proposals to a membership vote as provided by the bylaws. They refused to do so and instead filed a lawsuit. Right after the lawsuit was filed, Stand With Us Northwest listed it as an agenda item for its executive committee meeting under the category of project status. It posted online that Stand With Us filed the lawsuit against the Olympia Food Co-op and that it was a byproduct of the partnership between Stand With Us and the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Olympia is the hometown of Rachel Corey, the 23-year-old college student who was crushed to death by an Israeli army bulldozer in Gaza 7 years ago.
You're kind of hungry and you want to shop, pop on down to the food co-op. A full-line grocery of the natural foods, organic products so good for you. With prices low and the quality high, we'll have fun and laughter and more. Oh my! For member-owned, we're not for profit. The food co-op is so hard to top it. Olympia Food Co-op, cha-cha-cha, hey!
You know, we have bought some other property, opened the garden center. That was sort of a big deal on the west side.
Loan me a minute, let me borrow your ear. I'll sing you a song about Leonard Peltier. He's gone so long in a federal jail, the innocent victim of a tango tale. How many have gone before? And tell me how many more must be lost to the Indian war.
So a project I worked on this year that I felt really proud of, and that I was actually really proud of the co-op for, we did a supplies drive for the Interfaith Works shelter, which is a shelter for adults downtown. International Women's Day was the day that we kicked it off, and I took the day off of work and tabled with some of my coworkers out in front of the store. Some of my other coworkers did it at the East Side store, and we handed out information about the shelter, and I was blown away by how much people donated. And we kept the drive going for 2 months, and people would like generously bring in like huge boxes of shoes and like giant packs of toilet paper and food. Like people went to all kinds of places and bought clothing and food and supplies. And it really warmed my heart so much to see the generosity in our community, and that many people didn't even know the shelter was there. So this was their first opportunity learning about it and maybe getting a chance to assist more in the future. And when I was tabling, I remarked to one of my coworkers how impressed I was with how much people were stopping and asking what we were doing and wanting to learn about the shelter. And he said, well, part of why that's happening here is because it's the co-op, and people who shop here actually care about what's happening in their communities and want to participate and want to help people. And it made me feel really proud of us as a business, and also really proud of us as a community to try to step up and help people who need help.
As we grew from 13 to 26 to 30 to 45 to 6, and each time we're going, we can't possibly get any bigger. And you know, now we're 85.
Even though we had 2 stores for the longest time, we had we had one collective staff meeting, which is so different now from having the staff broken up into 3 parts. I think we've lost something. I mean, I know that there was a reason for that, and I know that the staff being so large kind of dictates that we break it up into pieces, but we've lost something by not having it be all of us together in one room, all of us able to hear each other at one time.
We're challenged by the size of the staff collective.
Yes.
Consensus as a decision-making practice is challenged by our size.
That's our strong suit, is to hear each other, to listen to each other, to yell at each other if we have to yell at each other. I mean, and we do. We absolutely do yell at each other. And to cry on each other's shoulders. I mean, that's part of being in a collective.
The longer we take and the harder sometimes those things can be, but even with small decisions, we do try to come to full consensus.
Like, you rely on those relationships because you know from that what everyone's strengths and weaknesses are. Like, if the sink were gushing and like out of control, you would not rush to me. I am not a handy person. I would just come into the back and go, "Oh my God, the side of the sink, it's exploding," and I would be no help. But you could go to me and, "Ian, the sink is exploding. Handle the front." And I'd be going, "Yes, I'm on it. I will totally help every customer, and they'll never know anything's wrong." And so, it's like that kind of, that. You need to meet together.
And I know that there are a lot of people who want non-collective, part-time non-collective workers. And I have to say that for the past 2 years, I have essentially behaved as a part-time non-collective worker. So it's been convenient for me, but I think that there has to be some sort of thing that keeps people with buy-in and keeps people able to access some collective say. I think that it just has to be able to happen without hierarchy.
To have a place where you can put consensus decision-making, collective management, non-hierarchical approach, non-hierarchical communication, to have a place that expects that of you, pushes you. I mean, both Grace and I have just been pushed to say, we want to make this sucker work. And in a sense, that has pushed us to make ourselves better, at all of those sets of skills.
I also think that one of the reasons Olympia Food Co-op has been successful to the degrees that we have, it has a lot to do with how formative Evergreen is in this community.
Right. Evergreen is trying to do a lot of the same things that we're trying to do, except it's an academic institution rather than a grocery store. Okay. So, so we attract the same kinds of people.
The co-op was founded in volunteerism, moving to cooperativism, and now we are having this program that is the Volunteer Working Member Program, which enhances our mission statement sense to give services to the community. This program is a blueprint of us because that's the way that all members of the Olympia Food Co-op can contribute to do our mission statement, which is more food for more people.
I can't say enough about the working members, all the people, the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people who come into the co-op and just say, "Hey, how can I help?" And the effort they put in, the expertise that they bring, and I really love how that participatory quality really is an expression of that sense of ownership.
This program has 3 major benefits. That is not only those 3, but the first one will be outreach and network in our community, that people can come and celebrate that we are different and that we can gather and understand who does what and why, who can relate on what. Also, we have the second part that people can come here to get skilled, to get educated in their own convenience, in their own pace, in very cooperative groups, learning through each other how do we do things differently. The third, not the last, that people can get 25% discount in their groceries by participating to achieve our mission statement of serving our community. So it's important for us to know that people understand what the co-op was, what it is, and where we're moving forward, to voluntarily wanted to be working with us on the floors and in the different activities that the co-op offers for you to be part of this society, this culture, this beautiful Olympia Co-op.
Well, it's sort of like a mainstay in my life that we have this place where you can go and you completely trust the food. You know, I really appreciate the time the staff puts into researching and making sure everything on the shelves is good for you. So that's, you know, I think it's a very trusted place to shop.
One of my favorite staff quotes is, "It's not this complicated. We just sell tofu." I was like, well, yeah, that's true. But I mean, our heart is in the community. I mean, our heart is, we know where that tofu is going. We know someone is going to eat it, and it's going to nurture them, and it's going to give them energy to have their life. And that's really important. I mean, that's pretty important work. I mean, it seems frivolous that just tofu, but it's deeper than that. There's more to it than that.
I hate to think what I would have been without the co-op. It just really has been this wonderful container for my life, and I have such gratitude and appreciation for what is afforded to me by the structure that is created by the people who have come there and have looked at what it could be, and looked at how good it could be, and have afforded their time and their energy and their thoughts and their brilliance to create such an amazing place.
We have a wide number of people who have toured as musicians, as circus performers, as writers. They go on sabbatical. I mean, people are supported in their other pursuits in life. I'm sure I'm leaving some out that are important, but you know, education. A lot of people have gone, gone back to school, gotten education, and stayed at the co-op. Have kids and have a flexible scheduling, work. It's just a very human place to work, and as a result, it makes us better humans.
Shelves, but I could not find the beer. I asked where it was, and they said we don't sell that here. Can we please then find it someplace near? 'Cause there ain't no beer at the co-op. There ain't no beer at the co-op. They got fake bacon and veganese and a ginseng flavored soda pop. But there ain't no beer at the co-op. There ain't no beer at the co-op. Mr. Driver, here's a $5. Can we please make another stop? My friends all have different dietary needs. Some do not eat meat, and some have gluten allergies. And we need our GDH-free cheese. But there ain't no beer at the co-op. There ain't no beer at the co-op. They got soy jerky, free-range turkey, carrot, peanut, sun drops. But there ain't no beer at the co-op. There ain't no beer at the co-op. Mr. Driver, here's a $5. Can we please make another stop? he could drink that beer at the co-op and get so drunk that we throw up. Don't be nervous, call the cleaning service. Oh, Gary will